Hey guys, Jacob here. This is Angler's Adjustments, and welcome to my master class, or also known as my room. It looks pretty nasty outside, man. We are in prefrontal, post-frontal, and mid-frontal conditions, so it's completely uh, uh, shut down the fish. They are not biting. Really hard to get them to commit, which is why I turn to finesse jigs to get bites. Let's get a constant variable out of the way, just like always. So if I'm going 1 foot or less, or if I'm fishing 1 foot or less, go black and blue all day. Now, if I am fishing 2 feet or more of Viz, just go green pumpkin. Anything of that natural tone type. Now, the reason why I don't have a specific color for 1 to 2 foot ranges is because on a given day it does tend to vary on which color they want in that type of water clarity. So I always try both. But I will always start with green pumpkin when I go to try them. Um, so again, 1 to 2 foot ranges, any of these will work. For the guy that doesn't really want to dive really deep into finesse jigs, or at least not yet, the first jig that we're going to talk about, guys, is going to be a Bass Pro Tungsten finesse jig. Now, this jig here, where it shines, is everywhere. Now, the most important thing about this jig is that it has a horizontal line tie. That little circle right there, it's horizontal line tie. So when I lay this flat, you got that line tie pointing straight up. Now, why is that important? It comes great through grass. It works in rock. It works in mud. It works in timber. If you just needed one jig, that is the jig for you. And plus, it's all tungsten. It's going to give you more sensitivity, a little louder, but the most important feature on this jig is that vertical line tie. That is what is allowing you to go through all sorts of cover. And then the hook keeper, pretty standard. It's just that little black slit right there. It's going to hold on the plastic really well. I don't have any issues with it. I like them. Um, Now, the number one trailer that I like this jig on is actually going to be Bass Pro's Chunk. What is this called? Elite Chunk Junior. Um, that is their green pumpkin color. Now the Elite Chunk Junior, man, I don't know why, but these claws stick up like they have air in it. Um, I don't know how, but they work, and I've been using them a lot more, especially for my deeper 1 ounce football jigs, and they just stick up, and it is pretty cool. Here's that package, that way you know what to look for when you walk in your store. Um, but that bait right there, or that chunk, I mean, it does wonders. Here is a TRD bug, and here is a TRD crawl. So this is the bug, and this is the crawl. So with these two baits here, I'm going to toss them on that bait, or on that finesse jig from Bass Pro. And the reason why I go with these is because, one, this creates that profile. It's got that nice beaver style bait. But if I want to look a little bit more like the forage there, then I'll go with that bulkier claw type look. And these baits stretch, so you're not going to go through a bunch of these. The only way to lose these is if you straight up bust your jig off. And I don't see that happening at all. But yeah, those two jigs, or trailers, will work perfectly for that jig. And again, here is that package. That way you know what to look for. It says TRD bug, and the other one will just say TRD crawl. And that's it, man. You're covered. Couple jigs, couple trailers, you're good to go. Um, oh yeah, also big thing, 3/8 ounce. That is a 3/8 ounce jig. Okay. So now for the guys that want to dive deep into this subject, here we go. This here, y'all, is made by Buckeye Lures. This is the flat top jig, flat top finesse jig. Now, this hints the name. It's flat top jig. So this is the jig that I'm gonna use to crawl on bottom. It's just gonna be crawling, and that is it. I'll hop it occasionally, every now and then, not a lot, but it's got a horizontal line tie. That's gonna help you stay down and just keep dragging all the way to the boat or all the way to the bank. Um, Now also, their weed guard on here is a little long, but it's not too terribly long. You can still get a really good hook set because they have a little bit softer or a softer weed guard. Doesn't get you hung up or anything like that. It's just easier to drive that hook through. So the stock weed guards I do like. I don't really have to cut them. Now I stick with 2 trailers for this one here. Now this is a rage tail baby menace. There's that bait there. There is the trailer for it. And they've got a nice slow kick to them. I don't really swim this bait. I'm just kind of dragging, and whenever I drag, those two little arms just kick a little bit, which I like. And it creates a more of a subtle approach for that bass and entice them to bite this thing. Here is the package for that one. That's a rage tail baby menace right there. Now, the other offering that I'm going to give you guys is actually a beaver style bait for that same jig, And this one, we're just aiming to get profile. So it would be that little river bug right there by Bass Pro. Just a simple beaver style bait. That thing just threads on really nicely. I cut the first 3 ribs off, and then just thread it on this guy here. And then once you have those 3 ribs off, it'll sit just about right there. And man, it does wonders. No kick at all. Just has the profile, just crawfish imitation. That is pretty much it. And again, this is their CRAW color, 3/8 of an ounce. The Strike King structure jig. So this is that structure jig right there. This is the baby structure jig. Now, I already have one out of the pack over here. This is just a green pumpkin one. This is black and blue. But with this bait here, they come stock with a little bit longer than average weed guards. This one is very, very long in this package. I mean, the hook is right there. The weed guard's all the way over here. So what I do when I first open the first mod that I make is I trim that weed guard. So just for time's sake, I already cut this weed guard down just to save some time. But it's still over that hook, but it's not way out here. That way I can still get a good hook set, and it's still weedless, perfectly fine. And I don't have to worry about that weed guard getting in the way because it's too long. The first one is going to be a Yum Chunk Crawl. This really just creates the profile for me. Has a little bit of action when you swim it, even more whenever you go to really burn it. But this jig for me is primarily for wood. It comes okay through grass. It comes okay through rock. They can drag pretty good. But for sure wood, and this finesse jig, I am on it. So why is this jig important? If I'm in an area with a lot of wood and a lot of timber sticking out, I'm going to get rid of this trailer. We're going to say bye-bye, okay, for now. Toss that one there. And again, guys, they had the same weed guard, just like that Bass Pro one there. So there's that one. With this trailer here, this is Bass Pro's Bo-hawg, okay. Now, if you look, they are very, very thin. Very, very thin. So, whenever I'm dragging this bait, or I'm hopping it a little bit and coming through that wood, here's that wood. Whenever I go to hit this jig up against the wood, it deflects a little bit. And this trailer that will be sitting on the back, since it's so thin, it reacts to hitting that wood better than all the other trailers that I have laying out in front of me. And when you hit that wood, the trailer just kind of moves a little bit, and it creates a lifelike image for that bass to just look at. And once he sees that little claw move the way this thing does, they will commit. They don't get hard bites for some reason. They kind of just suck it in. And then it's game over, basically. You get to sit the hook. But yeah, that's just going to sit right here. I'm going to thread this one on here. And there's a profile for you guys. But since it's so thin, whenever you go to hit this jig up against wood, those little arms will just quiver. And it works. That's a big secret of mine. And I just gave it out. So very minor, but it is very effective. Okay. So this next jig, guys, this is actually made by Chompers. And actually we're going to go a little heavier than normal. This is a 5/16 ounce jig. And I really do like that they're going with those natural browns. And things of that nature. But there's that jig. Okay. So there's that Chompers finesse jig. Now, what I want you to notice with this jig is that they have a longer shank than typical. So let's just grab a Bass Pro jig, the universal one, right? And we're going to lay them side by side. Look at the difference in the length of the shank of the hook. So on the Chompers baits, it's longer. You got a longer shank there. Same weed or bait keeper, it's just upside down. This one's right side up. But for the most part, the main difference is that shank. and of course the line ties. So this line tie, again, it is horizontal, which you want for that bottom contact. It really helps keep that bait down there. And this longer shank hook, I only use one trailer. So here's that green pumpkin menace. And the reason why I like it with that longer shank hook is because all that plastic is just going to be resting on it. I'm just going to line it up here. But I don't like how long that profile is. So I'm actually going to cut off, let's say, about 3 ribs of that bait. Right here. Okay, so we got that cut off. I'm going to throw that in our plastic bin. Now, when we go to thread this thing on here, we're just going to make sure that it's all perfectly straight. So here's the first entry. We're going to go straight down. Keep going a little more. We're going to come out here. And then we're just going to push it on that guard. And there's that jig. So it creates a little smaller profile for it. And it looks really, really good. Now this jig here, I'm only going to be fishing it in probably about 10 feet or to 15 feet, which is why I like that 5 to 16th ounce head more. Yeah, but that longer shank with that extra bulk of plastic, it actually helps you get down to the bottom a little bit faster. The next one, this is actually going to be Zman's Power Finesse. So this bait here, I'm typically fishing it around smaller rock or wood. I'm not typically dragging this bait. This is more of a shallow water finesse jig for me. And I'm just going to be around the docks. I'm going to be around that wood. And I'm going to be essentially putting the bait in any kind of hard area. Now, one thing that I want you to know about these is that the way that these hook keepers are designed, they've got the little wire keeper rather than the traditional. They do rip your trailers a little bit. So the very first time that you go to thread one on, make sure it's perfectly in line. That way you get the most out of that keeper, and you don't destroy your plastic trying to take it off again, do it again, taking it off again, and doing it again. So make sure the first time you do it is the right way, because you will tear up your plastic. So now, one major thing with this Power Finesse jig by Zman is that they have stouter hooks. Here, this is that Zman. This is Bass Pro. They seem to be a little bit thicker and stronger. So on this Bass Pro jig, you know, we can pull on that hook and it opens that hook a little bit. I mean, you can see that opening a little bit. But whenever I go to do that to Zman's, I mean, there's not a lot of give there. It's kind of hard to get that thing to open. So it is a much stouter hook at the base and along the shank. They do come with really, really long weed guards, and I trimmed that down already. Again, I don't like that. But on this one, I'm typically going to throw it on a monofilament or braid to mono leader, typically on a medium heavy rod, because it can handle that hook. And also with the trailer with these, I only stick with Zoom. So if I want a little bit more swimming action, we're going to use these Zoom swimming chunks. If I want this action and I just want the profile, I'm just going to get a Zoom chunk junior. So here's a swimming chunk, just basically if I want more action. And then this here is just going to be the chunk junior. The biggest thing with the Z-Mans, throw them on a little bit heavier rod if you can. They got a stiffer weed guard to them. They got those horizontal line ties. And just basically stick with profile with this bait, because you're typically fishing shallow with these, or get a little bit more action and throw a Zoom swimming chunk, and you're golden. So for the rod, guys, don't get overcomplicated about it. I do use my jerkbait rod for finesse jig. It is a great alternative to it. Jerkbaits and finesse jigs, I love it with this rod. But I've also been playing with another one. It's a more budget-friendly one. This is a copolymer monofilament line, I guess you could say. Right now I got a DT6 on it. Works great for cranking with this line. And with the finesse jig for this one here, it is a medium power rod, but it basically stretches as much as fluorocarbon, but not as much as mono. Mono is around a 17%. This one here is around 8% to 7% stretch, so it can really help you drive that hook home. But you also still got that forgiveness of the stretch of the copolymer and fluorocarbon. That way you can keep those fish pinned. But yeah, guys, that's it. That is a complete breakdown for it. Hope you guys enjoyed it and learned a lot. That way you can apply it to your jig fishing and to your brands. And that's pretty much it, guys. If you enjoyed it, leave a like. And I'll see you guys on the next one.